Welcome to Straight from the Muzzle, folks, where we're anything but straight. My name is Space, and I'm joined by my awesome returning guest.
Hello, it's me, Josh.
And today we are talking about the cheesy side of the holidays and cheese, because cheese is awesome. We figured with this particular episode, we've got two really interesting backgrounds. So on my background, I used to be a cheesemonger, which is basically someone who specializes in selling cheeses from all around the world. And then we have Josh, who's a cheese connoisseur, but also has a passion for cheese that's not really from the retail side that I'm from. So we have these two really good sides of cheese knowledge, and we're going to share a lot of it with you guys today. So it'll be a lot of fun. We have a big list of things to go over. I'll tell you. So I've wanted to do this episode for so long. And I've wanted to do like a panel at it at like a furry con and just do like a very short panel of like different cheeses you can try and have people, come up and take samples, because I feel like interactive panels are probably the best ones instead of just sitting there and be like, blah, 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 because those suck. Just like straight out of the box, they suck. Overall, I've been wanting to do a cheese episode, and I've thought in my head, how in the hell am I going to do this episode? Because it is impossible to include everything you need to know about cheese in one episode. It is impossible because there's just thousands of different things out there. There's pairings and accompaniments, and then there's cheese, and then the types and what they taste like. And then, of course, you've got the cutlery that goes with it, and the jams and the jellies and the crackers and the breads. And it just goes on and on and on and on. So what we're going to try to attempt to do is go over the basics for you guys, talk about cheeses that you can use for the holiday. We're going to go over types of cheeses, and then we're also going to go over the typical flavor profiles of these cheeses. All along the way, we'll share our variety of our favorites, ones that we've tried, and all that source and junk and whatever. We'll talk about pairings, because pairings are really interesting in the cheese world. You can pair, like, let's say wine and cheese together, which Josh learned the other day. But the thing is you can't pair just anyone with just any cheese, because then it'll just totally throw it off. And we'll go over why. And then we'll talk about building a cheese board, also known as a charcuterie board, which is just a fancy rich person word of saying cheese and meats, basically. And those can get wild and crazy too. So
going off on that, you were talking about how it would be nice to have a panel at a convention for cheese. Yeah. I think that's a great idea to have a panel for cheese, but also let people try the cheese. You can even have them like make their own cheese wheel.
That would be cool. There's a lot of like things that you can do. So depending on like where you live. So like here in Utah, we have Harmon's, which is basically a really upscale version of Whole Foods. And then most stores like that will offer like, well, not most stores. I say Harmon's will offer classes on how to make cheese or how to make mozzarella and, the fun stuff right there. And they'll do like wine and cheese tastings. They'll do cooking classes. And they actually have like actual chefs that they've hired that will put together all these types of menus. It's really cool and unique. But depending on where you live, there's different types of chain stores that are available that you can go to and find these items. One surprising one that I found out that I'm not mad about is Walmart. Some Walmarts actually do carry really good cheese. Shockingly, they're pre-packed. Obviously, they're not like cut and wrapped hand and anything like that, but they do offer a good variety of cheeses. So, I'm okay with that.
Man, we don't have anything in Florida. The Walmarts that we have, Publix, yeah, but if you want to find very, very, very like specialty cheeses, Publix will hold maybe like one specialty cheese per store. I went looking for specific cheeses today, actually, and I couldn't find anything in my local Publix. I mean, the most extravagant cheese I could find was goat cheese log coated in raspberry. That's it. They were very low stock on cheese. I wish there were more places here. I mean, Walmart,
I just found you one, but I don't know how far away it is from where you're at. So there's a company in Florida called Artisan Cheese Company. They're located in Sarasota. I'll send you the link. There you go. Also, all the links that I'm going to share today will be available in the information below so that you guys can go ahead and take a look at the different links. They're going to be really, really helpful. If you want to look for a specialty artisan cheese store, you can always just Google search specialty cheese and then the state or the city that you live in, and it'll populate what's the most closest one. It does get a little bit tougher with more rural type states or countries or cities, but more than likely, there's always at least one or two specialty stores available. They may be, a little bit further away, but I can guarantee it's totally worth it. So,
yeah, it's 3 hours.
Well, get on a plane and fly over there.
Get on a plane. I'll just drive the 3 hours.
Ew.
What do you mean, ew? It's less money to drive.
I think in Utah, we have, let's see, I want to say about 15 artisan cheesemakers out here, all ranging in varieties of things like cheddars and bries and goat cheeses, sheep's milk cheese, all different types of things. The thing with you might want to know, so I'm actually going to go over this right now. So there's a difference between specialty and mass-produced cheeses. So a mass-produced cheese would be like things you find on the shelves at Walmart or your local grocery store, usually the store brand, or, I guess if I wanted to name one out there, oh my God, Kraft, things like that. You'll find that on the store shelves, and those are readily available. They'll be ranging anywhere between mild, medium, and sharp. But honestly, if you try the mild, medium, sharp, there really isn't that much difference in flavor and all that jazz.
Kraft is good, though. When you got that craving, Kraft hits it.
Kraft does hit it. And I'll tell you what, so I was shunned a lot for this when I worked at Hartman's, but I really liked the Cheese Whiz in a can and Velveeta. And it's good cheese. There's nothing to it's not like fancy cheese, but it's good tasting. It's great for like a snack and stuff. I don't understand why people are like, oh, I'm too good for that. It's like, whatever. We all grew up on the same, level of crappiness of streets and whatnot. We all know what good cheese is. Let's just go with that.
Yeah, there's good cheese and there's cheese that'll get you by for the day. You don't always need the best cheese imaginable for every meal. If you wanted, for example, just cheese and crackers, you're not going to grab a $300 cheese for that. You could just use Cheese Whiz.
Yeah. Now, if you have the money and you want to grab $300 worth of cheese, yeah, go for it. By all means. Usually the more expensive the cheese, the higher quality it is. But you'll usually get smaller quantities of that cheese just because they want to keep it in a specific price range. So mass-produced, what?
I was going to say, do you really want to waste that small percentage of cheese for one Ritz?
Yeah, for real. But a Ritz is not a bad idea, though. And we'll go over, that's going to be in the accompaniments, like pairings and stuff. I'll go over different types of crackers and whatnot. A Ritz cracker is never to be shamed. It is a wonderful cracker. It's flaky, it's crunchy, it's buttery. It goes well with anything.
It really does. I bought 2 boxes of garlic butter Ritz. They're amazing.
Oh, do you like the Ritz, peanut butter ones?
Oh, I've never had that.
If there's the little peanut butter sandwiches and stuff.
Oh, those things. Okay.
Oh, those are amazing. They're so good. So a specialty cheese is a cheese that's usually made on a farm outside of the mass-produced market. It could be farms. They could be local. I don't want to say cheeseries because that's not the word. We'll just say localized artisan. Artisan is I don't really know how to explain what artisan is. It's just specialized cheese. And so generally specialized cheeses, depending on the type of cheese, are produced not necessarily in a mass quantity, but they are produced in a large quantity. And then there's different segments of that quantity. So they might do 20 wheels and they'll age that for 5 or 6 months. And then they'll do another set and age that for 5 and 6 months. And then they'll take the cheese that's been sitting for 6 months and they'll either sell it or age it longer from that. And so by doing that, then they can go and take that to a distributor and the distributor can bring it to the store, and which that's how they sell it. So if you go to a cheese and you notice that it's local, that's usually because it's coming from a local source. And those tend to be really good, but they can also be really pricey. Where it comes to mass produced, you can literally bring down the cost so much because you're really making it without that much cost that's going into it. But with a specialty product, you're actually getting higher quality ingredients and the yields of milk. I don't know if people know this. So the bigger the animal, the bigger the yield. The smaller yields. So if you ever go to a cheese shop and you notice that there's cow's milk, and they typically tend to be a lot bigger wheels. When you go and see goat's milk wheels, they tend to be a lot smaller because they produce smaller amounts of yield. And sheep's milk will always be the tiniest bits. That's why you find those like sheep's milk. I don't think I've ever seen a wheel of sheep's milk that was larger than like maybe a 6 to a 9-inch diameter. They don't produce as much. And so the yield is smaller, which thus then brings the price up because it's a commodity at this point and it's more in demand than, as you could say, cow's milk, because everyone has cow's milk. So
I've definitely had cow's milk cheese and goat's milk cheese before, but I don't think I've ever had or seen sheep's milk cheese. I mean, maybe I have, but I just haven't recognized it.
You have. It's called Manchego.
Oh, wait, I could have sworn that was goat cheese.
No. So Manchego is made with sheep's milk cheese.
Oh.
And then there's another one that's called Campo de Montalban, which is sheep's, goat, and cow, which is very similar to Manchego, which is also produced. Well, it's produced. Campo de Montalban is usually produced in Spain, but it is also relatively close to where Manchego is also produced, which is also in Spain.
That's like the Neapolitan ice cream of cheeses. I've never heard of that before.
It's so good. It's amazing. So that kind of brings us to our next thing. Different types of cheeses. Now, cheeses are usually typed out in different types of categories. So they could be like a cheddar could be a category. Brie could be a category. Blue, Gouda, Fontina, Ha-Varti, Stilton, which is part of the blue category. Gorgonzola, which has been on the fence because no one really seems to know if Gorgonzola really follows with the blue cheese category or if it's on its own. And then you have soft ripens, you have cheddars, you have aged Parmesans. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but they all kind of fall into very specific categories. Those categories would be soft, soft ripen, semi-soft. So that's kind of weird that there's 3 there. Ferment aged, and then blues. So with your soft cheeses, like the softest soft, you'll find things like fresh mozzarella. Those are the ones that come in like a ball. So sometimes, depending on the store that you go to, they'll either make it there in the store or you can get it like in a container that's sitting in water. Or brands like Galbani and, what's the other one? There's Galbani and there's one that I can never seem to pronounce. They either come in like a log that they're like pre-sliced, or they'll come in a ball, or sometimes they'll come in smaller balls. So like pearls, ovalines. And then there's like another one. Silingine, I think, is another size. Typically when it comes to mozzarella, the size actually does have different words for them. So pearls are obviously the smallest ones. And then the ones up from that are I just said them and I can't remember what they were. I think Silingine is the next one. Ovaline is the one up from that. And then up from Ovaline is the fresh mozzarella ball. So it's crazy of all the different variety. There's burrata, which is like fresh mozzarella, but burrata is kind of a unique thing because when you're making burrata, you kind of create this pouch and then you put a fresh cream in there and then you seal the pouch back up and then you continue the mozzarella making process. And so then when you go to restaurants and you see that they have something called burrata and you order it, if you cut into the burrata, it'll just ooze out and it's really cool.
Oh man, that sounds yummy.
It's delicious. It's kind of like when you get an egg sunny side up, it's like the same experience. You cut into that egg and it just goes blah, blah, blah. So
I'm gonna be honest, I've never heard of that before. Ever.
Burrata?
Yeah.
Burrata is more or less a more newer type of cheese, probably within the last 10 to 15 years. It's not new in the sense of where it came from. It's more new in the sense of how it was introduced into America. So you'll find that certain cheeses that all of a sudden appear in the United States have become really popular. Those cheeses aren't necessarily brand new. They're just brand new to the market. They've been around for hundreds of years. They're just now making it to the US. And the US has really strict guidelines as to what can and cannot come into the country. So raw milk, for instance, raw milk can be made in the United States, but it has to follow very specific guidelines. And you can make a raw milk brie and a raw milk cheddar, but the brie has to also fall within a very specific guideline. And if it's made into a cheddar, it has to be aged over a certain period of time before it can be brought to the market to sell for safety reasons.
Have you ever had anything like that before?
I've had
milk cheese.
I've had a raw milk cheese. It is not my type. It's not my favorite. It's a little bit more sour and kind of earthier in a flavor profile. It's not my kind of jam, but it is for a lot of other people. And if you live in Europe, that's totally a thing. That's a totally normal thing. It just, it's not my cup of tea. Mascarpone. A lot of people call it mascarpone. That is not how you call it. It's mascarpone. Most people will say mascarpone, but it's actually mascarpone. Mascarpone is like a sweet, it's like if sour cream were sweet. That's pretty much what it is. But it's Italy's version of a sweet spreadable cheese. And yes, it's a cheese. And there are a variety of things that fall in that category. So there's mascarpone, there's another one, creme fraiche, which is French. And then you have another one that's from, I want to say Germany, and it's very similar to sour cream. Not as sour though, a little bit more sweeter, but it definitely does have that heavy sourness to it. And then you could consider Greek yogurt as a possible cheese because it is kind of aged, or not aged, but produced like it. So those are technically cheeses as well. They're just a different way of making it. So if you see those are really like cream cheese, you know. But cream cheese is a little bit more stiff. So these types of things are a little bit more, not necessarily runny, but they're a lot more easier to work with.
So is regular yogurt considered cheese, or is Greek yogurt the exception?
You know, I mean, I guess with texture, I should probably take that back. So Greek yogurt should not be considered as a cheese, but the texture of Greek yogurt is right around the same texture of like mascarpone, creme fraiche, and sour cream. So texture-wise.
I am a sucker for creme fraiche, but I've never had mascarpone before, ever.
Mascarpone usually comes in like two forms. So mascarpone either comes just plain, and it does have a little bit of a sweetness to it, but only if you add other things to it that really makes it bloom. So with regular mascarpone, you really want to pair it with fresh fruits. The fresher the fruit, the better. You can do dried fruits, but it's just a really awkward thing to do because it's already dry and you got to crunch through that, and it kind of just ruins the mood. So creme fraiche and mascarpone, the whiter ones, you want to use those with like berries and raspberries and strawberries, and you can do bananas if you wanted to. The bananas are kind of an odd, while soft and yummy to eat, it's not as bright to play with. Anything citrus, I don't think I would put it with apples, but you might want to put it with pears. It just depends. And then the other one of mascarpone is the tiramisu, which is the espresso version. So it's got a coffee flavor to it. Those would be really great, which just like on their own for like, you know, breakfast or a brunch with the family or friends, or you could just eat it by the spoonful too. I've done it. Don't shame me. Those are pretty good. The next category is soft ripen. Those would be bries, camemberts, goat cheeses. Actually, goat cheese should be under... I'm going to put goat cheese in the soft category because goat cheeses aren't typically soft ripen. A goat cheese, also known as chèvre, so Chevre. People say chèvre or chèvre or chèvre. It doesn't really matter. It's just the French way of saying goat cheese. It's usually in a spreadable form. So you can find goat cheese in cheddars, Goudas, Spanish cheeses. I've never seen it in a Parmesan, though I don't think you would want it in a Parmesan, in my honest opinion. And then I've seen it in a blue cheese, but that's a funky thing right there. So they're good. Goat cheeses are great with like salamis and fish. You could probably put it with steak and other types of things. It really just depends on how you play with it.
You know how... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You know how parents say, like, you shouldn't do something and then you want to do it anyways?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to mix goat cheese with Parmesan. I need to try it now. You said you shouldn't?
No,
I think I'm going to.
I was just saying, like, okay, so like a goat's milk, I don't think would be used in a Parmesan just because of the flavor. I don't think it would work, but maybe it does. I mean, I've been out of the cheese game for a long time now, but at the time, I wasn't aware of a goat's milk Parmesan, but maybe there is one and maybe it does taste good. So that's what I was referencing to. I'm sure if you did like goat cheese with Parmesan, that might actually be kind of a fun blend. It could be, or it couldn't be, because then again, so this will go along with pairings at the bottom, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But when it comes to cheeses, you want to be really careful on flavor profiles because Parmesans tend to be stronger in profile, whereas goat cheeses tend to be softer. Yet they do have a goat and farmy pungent to it. The two flavors would counteract each other. So you can try it, go for it, and tell me how it goes. But it's not something I don't think anyone would really outright recommend doing.
I'm definitely going to try it. I'll let you know.
Other soft ripened cheeses, so bries and camemberts, Vacherines. So brie comes from France. Camembert also comes from France, but Camembert does have some country restrictions on it. You might find things that say like DPO or PDO or AOC. And some cheeses like Camembert and Brie have these protections on them, which means that they can only be made in a specific area of that country and no one else can make that cheese and call it that. Otherwise, you'd be breaking international law and you don't want to go down that road. What makes it kind of cool, though, because of how they're protected, it means it's a higher quality. The governments, unlike America, the governments in Europe and elsewhere, when they really do have a cheese like PDO or an AOC on it, they really put everything into it to protect that cheese. It's like basically their pride and joy to represent their country. So typically you'll find really, really good flavored cheeses because they're protected. And those are also really hard to get into the United States because sometimes those countries can't import them, or it's also that the United States just can't get them as well. It kind of just depends. But I was talking with Josh earlier this week, and Josh was telling me about a brie cheese that he left in the fridge.
Oh.
And it became rock hard.
Yeah. So during the past hurricane that we had, oh man, I forgot what was the name of the hurricane?
Hurricane something. Helene?
Yeah. During Hurricane Helene, we evacuated my house to go to a apartment in a big city. And I left behind my brie in my fridge that I've been aging because I really wanted to try like aged gooey brie for once. I've never had it. I've never aged it, but I forgot it when I was evacuating because, I think about my clothes, water, computer. Brie wasn't really the first thing on my mind. And then I came back after a week and a half and my neighbor was like, "Oh, you guys didn't have power." I immediately thought, oh no, that means my fridge hasn't had power for a week and a half. I go to my fridge and I just open it and it's just a horrible smell waft from the fridge. And I look at the container of brie and it's like slightly open. I fully open it, take it out, and there's like these black dots on it and it's browned. And then I could see that at some point it was aging perfectly fine and it was like oozing out, but it flash froze. It's like a frozen resin waterfall, but it's like dark orange. I was going to try it to see, maybe it's like super aged or something and it tastes really good, but I just could not bear the smell. So I threw it out. You told me that I should have cut it open, and I should have, because it would have been...
Just out of curiosity, I mean, I don't know if I would have eaten it either, but so some cheeses will do that. When a cheese sits out for too long, whether it's wrapped or in its own bare shape, it will start to harden from the outside in. But depending on the density of the cheese itself, the inside could actually still be just fine. It's just the outside that's completely rock hard. Now, I don't recommend at this point, if you've left a cheese out for, let's say, like a couple of days, like a brie or anything else that's been sitting out or without refrigeration, I don't think I would recommend eating it. I more or less just wanted to see what the inside looked like, because sometimes they're still just fine on the inside.
I probably would have eaten it if it looked good enough.
The risk you run with soft cheeses like bries and camemberts and Taleggio's, so I'll go over Taleggio here in a second, is that while they're good to eat at room temperature, you don't necessarily want to keep them out on the counter. You want to put them back in the fridge. They're also very time sensitive. So bries or soft ripened cheeses are meant to only be out on the shelf or in refrigerating for such a period of time, after which bacteria and other things can start growing, and then those can actually cause health issues. So you want to be careful with that. So if you get a brand new brie cheese and you've cut it open, like, and it's oozing, oh, that's the best. But if you leave it out and it's out there on the counter for an hour, whatever is on the expiration label, cut that time in half. That's how much time you have left to use it.
Jeez.
Yeah, because it's more or less more of a safety thing, because when a cheese isn't cooling, so cheese is usually held at, I want to say, between 39 to 43 degrees, and that holds it in what we call stasis. So it keeps it where it needs to be. Once you bring that cheese out of that stasis and it starts to warm up, then the clock starts to go and the timer is counting down, and you only have so much time to, at that point, cut it, wrap it, put it back in the fridge, or sell it. And then after that time has passed, then you have to chuck it because it's no good anymore. It's not safe. But that's like typically that's the American way. In other countries, it's totally not a big deal. But because of how strict the United States is with pasteurizing and milk and all that stuff, we kind of grow up with that kind of sensitivity. So we have to be really careful.
So would you say it's more of a temperature sensitivity than an oxidation sensitivity, or is it like a combination of both?
It's both. So temperature sensitivity and then oxidation also takes a role as well. Typically, let's say we take a Gouda. No, we'll say we take a Parmesan because that's easier. Take a Parmesan out of the fridge and it's on the counter. You want to let it warm up, and I'll explain that later on the road. But you'll notice that as the cheese starts to warm, it also starts to sweat. And that's not a bad thing. It's just warming up. But the cheese is now, I guess you could say, alive, but not like in a weird way. It's coming above, I guess. How do I explain this? A lot of cheeses are aged at a certain temperature. And then to hold it in that temperature, you hold it in a specific temperature range. And then when you're ready to eat it, you bring it out and you let it warm up. But if you let the cheese warm up too long, it becomes soft and then air gets to it. And what does air do? It dries it out, and that dries out the flavor. But then it also is like an incubator, and it also creates mold and other things to grow on the cheese or in the inside of the cheese. So it's a cat and mouse game kind of a thing. If you're having a party, it's totally fine. Have it out on there, whatever, no big deal. But if it's just, you and you're only eating little bits of it, take it out, have a couple of bites, wrap it back up, put it back in the fridge, and only use it to the expiration date. If you've left it out on the table longer than you think, cut the time in half. And that's also the case with milk. If you have milk that's been out on the counter and it's starting to warm up, you should be taking a fraction of the date off and moving it up. So there's that. The other type of soft ripened cheese is something called a wash rind. So a wash rind is a cheese that's washed with a brine or a typical solution, and that's washed on the outside of a cheese. And then they do that periodically throughout a period of time. So again, when it comes to cheeses and aging, there's a time limit, but it just depends on how the cheese is being made and how long it's being held and aged. Usually they're held in cellars and they have specific temperatures that'll keep the cheese where it needs to be at stabilizing wise. So it's okay for like the manufacturer to have a cheese that might be slightly warmer temp, but it'll never be the temperature that you normally would have in your house. Taleggio's are really gnarly cheeses. They are so smelly. They're right up on the fence with blue cheese, because blue cheese is pungent and funky, and then Taleggio kind of smells like a sock that's been on your foot, but it's been wet for like a week, and it smells awful. But it has a really good flavor. You just have to be able to get past that smell.
See, now, I really like blue cheese, the smell and the taste. I'm wondering how I'd fare with Taleggio.
If you're sensitive to body odors, you'll be sensitive to Taleggio. Let's just say that.
It's that bad.
It's in its own thing. But like the thing is, like Taleggio itself has really good like buttery nuttiness to it. It's creamy. It's really good with like, steaks and just depending on what you want to use it for. It's a good cheese. But overall, that smell just hits you right in the face. And oh man, it's rough. I hate cutting Taleggio. Even if I were to go back and work on a cheese island, I still would hate it. It's the stinkiest cheese. It's just god awful. But it's good tasting.
Maybe I have had Taleggio then, because when I was at Disney, they had like a little cheese tasting area where I got to try a bunch of different cheeses. And there was blue cheese. Well, I don't know what type of blue cheese. It was just a blue cheese. And then there was another cheese that looked like blue cheese, but it smelled horrible. Like it smelled worse than the other one. So maybe that was Taleggio.
Taleggio won't look like blue cheese, and typically they don't have the molding that a blue cheese would have. So it could have been something different or similar. But then again, Taleggio comes in multiple forms. One's super creamy. Sometimes it comes in a harder form. It really just depends on where it's being made and who's making it.
So many cheeses.
I know. Then we have the semi-soft cheeses. These are the more typical ones that you'll be familiar with. Ha-Varti, Munster, and Fontina. Fontina is the lesser known of those, but Ha-Varti is a pretty neutral one. Munster is not what you think it is. We're typically used to the Munster that has like that orange, reddish, outline on it on sliced cheeses. But a real Munster is very similar to what a wash rind looks like. And it's god awful. It smells like feet. So I don't really know how that really got translated into the way we eat it as opposed to the way it was made. I still have never been able to figure out why, but it's there. Fontina is very similar to Ha-Varti. It's a lot smoother. Oddly enough, so there's a couple of different varieties. The Italian Fontina typically comes in a wheel, but it's a lot flatter. So if you were to do a wheel height, it'd probably be about 3 inches high. And then the size of the wheel probably be about 12 or 14 inches in diameter. So, and those I like because they're fun to cut. And then, of course, if you hold it at its strongest end and you wobble it or you wiggle it, it kind of goes, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's just, it's kind of fun. And then there's Danish Fontina, which usually comes in a red wax, very thin. And that one's very similar to Ha-Varti itself.
I love Ha-Varti. Like, so there's this like Hispanic kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's not like, I mean, no, it's not a gas station. Bodega? I don't know.
I've heard of bodega.
Maybe it's considered a bodega. It's a family-owned kind of gas station thing, but it's not a gas station. It's like a small micro market kind of thingy. But they sell a bunch of different cheeses from Spain and other Spanish countries. And Ha-Varti is one of those cheeses they sell. And I always buy, it comes in like a square. It doesn't come in a circle, which I see most cheeses coming in. It comes in a square. It's a big block, and it's very salty. The Ha-Varti I get is wet. I don't know if that's a normal thing, but it's very wet, salty, and it's very good.
I think a typical brand of Ha-Varti you might be familiar with is Castello.
I think that's, let me see.
There's one that's Castello. Castello does make a whole variety of Ha-Vartis. Some of them are like brick hard. They usually come in a more of a rectangle form. There are other Ha-Vartis that are made smaller. They can be rough or soft. It all depends on who makes it, what the ratio is. Some of them, like, when I would cut into a Ha-Varti, some of them would just be so soft that you could actually smush it. And then the other times they would just be like a thick sponge, pretty much. So it really just depends on the maker and who makes it.
Genuinely, I don't know. All I can tell you is it's a square and it has light blue packaging and Spanish words. I have no idea what brand it is. I just know that I can only find it in this small market.
Let's see.
I don't know.
Is it called Revital?
How do you spell that?
Here, I'll just send you. Is it that?
No.
Okay.
It's like a neon, like teal. It's like a teal, like a very light blue label.
Like that?
Yeah, but it's Spanish.
Okay. Probably a little bit more out of my wheelhouse then.
Yeah,
but yeah, Ha-Varti comes in like a lot of people make Ha-Varti, so it's more of like a common cheese that you'll find. You'll find it in pre-packs on the cheese walls where you can get like sliced cheeses. You'll find them in the delis. You'll find them in the specialty cheese areas. It's a very common cheese. It's readily available, and most everyone's usually had it, so it's really good. Those are really good on cheese plates and platters just because everyone loves Ha-Varti. And then your firm and aged cheeses would be like your cheddars, your Goudas, your Manchegos, your Parmesans. Those typically are aged anywhere between a couple of months to a couple of years. Typically, when it comes to cheeses that are aged, the longer it ages, the sharper it gets, but the more flavor starts to develop. But I honestly am a firm believer that when it comes to Gouda, after about 12 months, it kind of just doesn't really get any better than that. Yeah, it gets sharper, but the flavor really doesn't develop that much better. So I've seen like ones that are like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, 12 months. And then I've seen one that goes as high as 18 months. The thing with the 18-month one, it's good, but it's not really that much different than a 12-month aged one. It's just a lot harder. And the thing with a cheese that's aged longer like that, the shatter potential is a lot higher as well. Meaning like if you cut into it, it's going to break apart. Like if you dropped a glass on the floor. So it's just a little bit more, those are harder. I hated cutting those on the island because you had to like, usually the longer the age of the cheese, the harder the rind was. And then it wasn't just a rind, it was a rind with wax that was on top of it. So in order to cut through those, we have these like cheese pull wire things. I'm not sure how to really explain it. They were like the size of a clipboard. You had a handle and the wire went from the handle forward and then down through a slot. And then it hooked onto 2 springs that were hooked on the bottom part of it. So as you pulled, you had more tension on it and you could cut through it easier. But in order to cut through a cheese like that, you had to score it with like a score. We would call it the hook. It's basically like, it's what we use to score Parmesan or Reggiano wheels. But you'd have to score like the edge of the wax and then pull through. And honestly, I think with the longer aged cheeses, I probably broke at least 1 or 2 wires when cutting them because they're so fucking hard to cut. So there's definitely that. But like I said, the longer a cheese ages, the sharper it gets, but the more flavor starts to develop and you'll get more like strong, awesome flavors.
See, okay. I have never had aged cheese before, except for this one time. Man, I can't remember the name of the store. It's a store. It's like Western themed. You ring a bell and you get a cashier. Actually, let me look it up real quick because it'll narrow down what kind of cheese this was. Bell ring cashier store, Florida. Man, I'm trying to. Trader Joe's. So it was a Trader Joe's 6-month aged cheddar.
Trader Joe's is good.
Yeah. I mean, I'd never been to a Trader Joe's until then. My friend was like, oh, there's a bunch of cheeses here. You're going to love it. I did find a lot of cheeses there. But one of the ones that caught my eye was a 6-month-old cheddar bar. It was like a chocolate bar. It was shaped like a chocolate bar. And it was just in the checkout. So I was like, oh, let me grab this real quick. I got that with 4 other cheeses. Manchego being one of the 4 cheeses because I love Manchego.
So good with chocolate.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
But the cheddar, man, I did some research into what an aged cheddar would taste like. And I found a lot of search results. And some of them were saying, oh, it tastes complex. And some of them were saying it tastes sharp. I'm like, what does sharp taste like? I don't know. I'm not entirely familiar with the phrase complex. I'm assuming it means like you have to be accustomed to it. Is that what that means? Complex?
Yeah, it's like wine. When you first drink wine, it's really gross. And over time, you become accustomed to it. But it could also be complex, meaning that the flavors are just so bold that it's really hard to kind of pick out what it's supposed to taste like. So it's kind of like an enigma.
Huh. Well, I bit into it. Like I took a huge bite and it was not easy to bite into. I bit into it and it was like a nutty flavor, kind of, but I don't know. I didn't like it. I did not like it. I had to throw the rest of the cheese away. I just could not force myself to eat it. I ended up just eating the Manchego. But I don't know. There was something wrong with me and that cheddar. We were clashing. My taste buds were clashing with that 6-month-old cheddar. I couldn't down it.
So 6 months. Well, 6-month cheddar.
Maybe it was 9. I don't know. 6 or 9 months. It was one of the two.
Cheddar's kind of a finicky one. Unlike Gouda, cheddar has a very distinct taste to it. Depending on how you make it, there could be cloth bound, it could be wash rind, it could just be aged as is. Those all play into the factors of how it's going to taste in the end. What sharp means is it's how it bites at you. So it's kind of like a zing, like as if you were to bite into a lemon. You know how we all squint because of the lemon sourness?
Yeah.
It's kind of like how you would describe a sharpness from a cheddar. It just bites at you in a way that no other flavor does. And some people really like that and some people really don't. So if that is your baseline for like a 6 or 9 month aged cheddar, that will give you an idea as to what to look for and to not go beyond that. It's just the sharper cheeses, they're kind of rough. Like the 18-month-old Gouda, it's very much like that. You bite into it and you're just overwhelmed like this really like bold explosion of flavor, but almost not in a good way. It almost kind of reminds me, now my taste preferences are a lot different from everyone else's. So when I bite into something like that, to me, it kind of tastes like that weird rubber taste that if you've ever like chewed on a rubber band before, and it has that weird taste.
Really?
It kind of tastes like that to me. But it's different for everyone. Some people might say, oh, it tastes like this or it tastes like that. And that's totally fine. Everyone's a little bit different when it comes to cheese taste. And that's a completely normal thing.
I just never thought you could compare a cheese to a rubber. I mean, I haven't had it, but that's a comparison.
So, I mean, like not all cheeses taste like that. Some of them are really good, but some cheeses, they're just really sharp and they bite at you. And sometimes they remind you of something that's not necessarily good. That would be called taste association with smell, usually is what it is, instead of smell association with taste. Now, Manchegos do come in multiple forms of aging. So it's usually about 3... Manchegos are kind of interesting. So they are aged, but they are also named by the age. What I mean by is typically a young manchego will be called a fresco. A 3 weeks to 4 months will be called a semi-curado. A curado is 3 to 6 months. And then anything beyond that, like 1 to 2 years, is a viejo.
I actually found the manchego that I ate. The second one. The second one was my first time having manchego. It was like in a around the world kind of cheese platter thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then the second time I had it was the Kirkland signature manchego cheese, 6 months. Actually, it says sheep's milk there too. I just can't read, I guess. I mean, I'm a dog, so I mean, what do you expect? Yeah, that one's 6 months manchego. I think that's my favorite age for a cheese. That's my favorite manchego.
Yeah, for manchego, mine is like roughly between 4 and 6 months. I feel like that's the best flavor combo.
I also see that sticker there, the AOC sticker.
Oh yeah, so AOC. Let me pull up AOC here real quick so you guys understand what AOC is. AOC is not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That is not who that is. I'm looking for cheese meaning. There we go. So it stands for Appellation d'Origine Control, which basically means it's a cheese that is protected by the government that can only be made in a specific area of that country by specific farmers. It cannot be made anywhere else in the world. If you try to make a cheese that is AOC protected and you call it that and you're selling it like that, you're going to be in big trouble. I can't even tell you how much trouble you'll be in. Not only will your government be pissed, you're going to be pissing off another government as well.
So we get fines up the wazoo.
Yeah. And then the other one for aged cheese is like Parmesan, which we've kind of talked about. And then the other type is blue cheeses. So you got things like Gorgonzola, Roquefort, Stilton. A generic one would be blue cheese. So those are going to be like your stinky cheeses. Those are the ones that are literally kind of look like it's blue. They're spotted and speckled. Those are going to be your stinky ones, but those are also really good. It just depends on the type of blue cheese or Gorgonzola that you get, because each one is a variety of its own flavor and taste. So those are your types. Now we got to go over the profiles because they're all completely different. And this brings up my thing that I'm going to share in chat. Well, I've already shared it with you, so you have it. It's called the Taste Wheel. You can find a variety of them online, but I think I found one that is fairly good. When you're eating a cheese, it's really fun to kind of identify what you think the cheese tastes like. So you typically eat the cheese and you put it in the middle of this wheel, and then you determine if it's earthy tasting, if it tastes rotten, if it tastes savory, fruity, floral. And then from there, let's just say it tastes fruity. Then from there, you decide, does it taste citrusy, tropical? Is it canned fruit? Does it taste more like artificial candy? And it's kind of fun to identify a cheese by the cheese wheel flavor thing. And it's usually fun to have a little notebook next to it. So you write down the cheese, you write down who it's from, how long it's been aged, what kind of milk is used, and then you take a bite and you write your notes on it, which is a lot of fun to do because then you'll come back to it and be like, oh, that's right. This is what I thought of this cheese, or, oh no, I didn't like this cheese.
Yeah, you know what I just saw on this wheel? So there's like normal things like veggie, fruity, floral, woody, you know? But then there's chemical and solvent and animal.
Yeah. So chemical and solvent, I would describe as super aged cheeses, like beyond that 18-month mark. Could be like 2-year, 3-year cheeses. That's when it becomes like astringent. And it's just, you know, you take a bite of it and it tastes like it's sucking all the moisture out of your mouth, and it's just not in the right way. Some people really like that. I don't like that. So, you know, that could be a thing. But there's lots of different wheels that have a variety of different options on it. There was one, and I don't honestly understand what that means, but there was a flavor profile called Caddy. I don't know what that means. I have no idea. Catty.
Like feisty, maybe?
Maybe. So with that being said, we're going to go over the different types of cheeses and their profiles. So the first up on the board, and these are going to be cheeses that you're most likely going to find at parties as well, which is why I wanted to go over those and not go into great detail of all the different types because I don't want to overwhelm anyone's mind. And the first type is Brie and Camembert. While they look the same, they do not taste the same. So Brie tends to be mild, buttery, and nutty. it's pretty self-explanatory of what those flavors are. Whereas a camembert usually is pretty intense, earthy, and mushroomy. It could also be because of how it's made, where it's made. And then, of course, cow's milk, it ranges. There's different types of cows that produce different types of milk that also produce different types of flavors. So it really just depends on what was used. And then, of course, on top of that, it also depends on what the cow's eating. So in Switzerland, it's really common. This is actually a really cool thing. Switzerland and the Alps, they have like these little things called chalets, which are just little cabins, basically. But at the beginning of time, I don't remember if it's spring. So I think it's spring and summer. They're at the base of the mountain. Then as summer goes into fall, they climb up the mountain and they take the cattle up that way too. And then they produce the cheese at... No, I think maybe it's summer and spring. They start at the top and then they work their way down to the mountain at the base. It's one of those, but they gradually move up and down. And of course, the vegetation also is different at each elevation. So it does change the property of the taste profile of the cheese. And it makes it either more intense or more fruity or more nutty or more sweet. So it's really interesting. So there's that.
That's really cool. It's like legitimately seasonal flavors. That's actually pretty cool.
That's legit like what it is. And then the cool thing is, you know, I did like a presentation when I was a lead cheesemonger, and I did it as how elevation and atmospheric conditions change the properties of how a cheese ages and also tastes. Because at different elevations, you can make a cheddar. Let's say you just make a base cheddar at sea level, and then you make a base cheddar at a higher elevation. The profiles of that taste is going to be completely different because there's different vegetation and it's just different conditions. So it's really neat. There's a lot that goes into cheese making. It is a complete science and just complete wizardry.
It's making me wonder, you said sea level. I know what sea level means, but what if you fed a cow seaweed, just seaweed? How would that affect the taste of cheese?
It could probably make it a little bit saltier, because seaweed tends to be salty, but seaweed is also in a salty ocean. So I don't know. That's actually a good question. I don't know how to answer that one. That's a new one for me. The next category is goats or chèvre. Goat cheese tends to be tangy, so light and lemony, earthy, which could also be farm and barnyardy, and nutty. Now, almost, I want to say 50 to 60% of the time when people come and they ask us, you know, what cheeses they like, we pull out a goat cheese and they don't like it. And it's usually because they grew up around a farm or on a farm where there were goats present. And that in itself can really ruin it because you smell and associate that flavor and that smell with the outcome. So it could be like really gross and poopy and you know, farmyardy smelling. And that's how you're going to forever associate that particular product going forward. But it can be nutty as well. Typically, goat cheese does come in a soft form. You'll find them in like little mini logs and stuff. And just depending on who makes it, Laura Chanel's is a goat cheese. Phenomenal. I can't really say anything bad about them. They make a really good goat cheese. They do ones where they roll it in like a spicy cinnamon one. I think they do one where they roll it in blueberries and blackberries. There's one with apricots. There's one with lemons, marmalade. And typically with goat cheeses, you want to typically pair them with fresh fruits because that's going to bring out the best in both worlds.
You know, I've never even heard of a spicy cinnamon cheese before. When I think cheese, I don't really think spicy.
Oh,
well, I mean, except for pepper jack, but...
So goat cheese and like pepper jelly or jalapenos or habaneros or salsa, really good combinations there because they really help elevate each other going higher and higher with flavor. A lot of cheeses can't do that, but goat cheese is one of those where it can really enhance the meal that you're having. The next one is sheep's milk. So sheep's milk is an interesting one. It's buttery, nutty, and rich, and sometimes can be butterscotchy and caramely, depending on how it's made. Now, Manchego is made with sheep's milk. There are other blends of Manchego that you can get it with sheep's and cow, or sheep's and goat, or sheep's, cow, and goat. And depending on where it's made, how long it's aged, it can have these properties. But there is one particular cheese that's made in Norway that's called Gjetost or Skekqueen. To spell Gjetost, I have to say it as I spell it. So it's J-Jet Ost, so Gjetost. This is a very unique way of making cheese. So what it is it's made with whey, not the milk itself. So whey is a byproduct of making milk and cheese. So they skim off the whey on the top. They combine that with goat's milk, cream, and sugar. Then when they pasteurize and they make that product all together, that process caramelizes all of those ingredients and thus makes it this like square little block that looks like a block of caramel and tastes like a block of caramel, but also has those sheep and goats flavors too. They're not overpowering. They're just there. And it's such a good cheese. You can slice it, dice it, kind of soften it up so you can, it doesn't really spread. It's kind of like a really, really stiff peanut butter that just doesn't want to move. But it's a really, really good cheese. And it comes in 3 different varieties. There's one that's just the red one. Well, it's caramely looking. The packaging is red. There's the blue one, which is just straight up made with goat's milk. And then there's the purple one, which is more of a chocolatey caramely version of it. And it's so flipping good. Those are really good with like crisp apples, pears. I wouldn't pair them with berries, citrus fruits of that nature. It's just not the right combination. With something soft like that, you want to have a combination that's crunchy. It's just pleasing to the senses and it tastes really good too.
I love caramel apples. So, I mean, I really want to try this cheese with an apple. I don't know why, but you said crisp. I really want to try it with cucumber. See if that works out.
You could. Cucumber tends to be really watery and just vegetable-y kind of a flavor. And those combos of flavors wouldn't mesh well with the caramel. But I say, if you want to try it, go for it. If you want to do something with a cucumber, I recommend doing a little bit of salt and then either feta or goat cheese. That'll be phenomenal with it. Ha-Varti, Munster, and Fontina. So Ha-Varti tends to be buttery, mild, and slightly sweet. It is also highly versatile. They come in a variety of flavors like regular, and then there's chive, there's dill, there's jalapeno. Oh, what's the other one? Caraway, which I don't like. I think it's gross. Mushroom. So it comes in a variety of things. There's another cheese that's very similar to Ha-Varti called Buttercase or Butterkaza. It literally looks like a stick of butter, but it tastes just like a Ha-Varti with a buttery tone to it. Phenomenal. Munster tends to be mild, savory, and slightly tangy. And I am talking about the sliced version of it. And then Fontina is nutty, buttery, earthy, slightly, so it can be slightly earthy or mostly earthy, and it can be pungent. The Italian one and the Danish one don't tend to be very pungent. But Fontina is made in varieties of ways, so it just really depends on who you get it from. Overall, I wouldn't necessarily say it's 100% pungent or earthy. I think it could be more nutty and buttery. Cheddars, they're different variety or profiles of cheddars. So because there's different versions of it, there's like cave aged, which yes, they're actually aged in caves, or they're aged in like a building that is kind of built to be like a cave, atmospheric wise and all the conditions. And they call those like cheese caves. Cloth bound, which is basically kind of like doing the wash drying, but then you're taking a cloth. It's usually like a cheesecloth and you're wrapping it around the cheese. And then there's Vermont cheese, which is obviously made in Vermont. And then English cheeses. So those are like your Red Foxes, your Stiltons. Stilton can come in blue cheese. It can also come in a regular form as well without the blue. And then the wash rinds. On a base level, they can all be nutty, savory, earthy, salty, sweet, and so on. It just, like I said, depends on who makes it and where you get it. If I had a choice and I had to choose a cheddar for the rest of my life, it would be Red Fox cheddar from England. It's called Red Leicester, Leicester, like Leicester. Yeah, it's one of those cheeses that's made specifically in a specific area. I don't believe it has a protection on it, but the cheese is kind of like this bright orange and they have these like little crystallines in it. If you ever find cheeses that have like those weird like white crystals in them, that's a completely normal thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not mold. It just happens during an aging process. It actually kind of makes it better because it gives it like a crunch. So it's really nice. And then they also put these like little tiny salt flecks in the Red Fox as well. So it's like this really just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a really good cheddar. If you get your hands on it, you will just be like, oh my God, he's right.
You know what's strange? I saw this specific cheese at a Trader Joe's, and it was in the red packaging, orange letters, and like a black fox between the letters.
Yeah.
And I bought it solely because it had a fox on it. Solely because of that. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And then I opened it and it was like little specks. And I'm like, did it go bad?
No.
I look into it and it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah, it's purposely made like that.
And the one that I got specifically was 16-month aged cheddar. And I love this one, but I don't like the 6 or 9 month one that I got at the checkout line. And then I also got it because I'm a soccer head kind of, and Leicester City FC is one of my favorite soccer teams, maybe because it has a fox in the logo, but also I like their team. I just like Leicester City. So I saw that the cheese was made in Leicester and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So that's another reason why I bought it. And I ended up actually really, really liking this cheese.
They actually, I believe when that team had one, I'm not sure which one it was, but when they had one, like that home team had won a game or something, they actually put the cheese, they designed a specific label to celebrate the team itself. And they only do that for a little bit, but it was really cool. Yeah, it was really neat.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Gouda, depending on the milk, it can be nutty, sweet, rich, tangy, and savory. Goudas come in varieties. They come in different ages. They can be goat's milk, sheep's milk, cow's milk, a blend of any of them. And they're all wonderful. Blue cheeses. Those are the salty, funky, earthy, pungent, nutty, and tangy cheeses. Not everyone likes blue cheese. More than likely it's because people think the mold is bad. I hate to break it to you folks. All cheese is made with mold.
Oh, no.
Just saying. Oh, no. With blue cheeses, the best way to try a blue cheese is not to associate smell with taste. So generally when you smell something and it off-puts you, it makes you alert and you don't want to go near it again. And that usually happens with blue cheese. So give it another try if you have already had it. What I recommend doing is when you're eating a blue cheese or a pungent, funky cheese, completely breathe out and then take the cheese in and let it sit on your tongue and melt and then associate the taste with the smell. And the reason being is because the taste will help enhance what the smell will be. And then it also helps you kind of navigate, okay, it tastes kind of like this and I can see the saltiness and the fruitiness and the nuttiness of it. And it's just overall a better experience. It's not a guarantee fix. Not everyone's going to love it. If you're breaking into the blue cheese game and you're just not quite sure what to do, if the store happens to carry a cheese called Amish Blue, it's really good cheese. It's super cheap. It's salty and buttery. And although there's a lot of blue present, it's really not that bad. In fact, if I had to choose a blue cheese to eat for the rest of my life, it'd be that one.
Dang, that must be really good cheese then. I should try it.
Gorgonzola, also in the blue category, comes in two types. So the first one is dolce, which is sweet, and that tends to be mild, creamy, and lightly sweet. And it's also a lot smushier. The picante, which is a lot drier, usually comes in a stronger, sharper, and pungent flavor. And then Gorgonzola typically is made in Italy, but you can find it in other parts of the world. And then lastly, Parmesan, just depending on how you get it and how long it's aged. Parmesan can taste rich, tangy, nutty, sharp, fruity, and bold. But Parmesans are pretty good no matter where you get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a lot to take in. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep a copy of these notes so you all can look at it and refer back to them if you need to, because it's a lot to take in and cover. So yeah, it kind of gives you a baseline of what to expect. Again, everyone's tastes are going to be completely different. They might be similar, but they're definitely not going to be the same. And it's okay to be like, I don't like this cheese, or okay, I like this cheese, but I don't think it tastes like that. Maybe Space was wrong. That's totally fine. Go for it. Everyone is different and you're allowed to have your own experience. The next thing is pairings. So this gets a little tricky. Some things to note about pairing cheeses is you never want to pair a strong, sharp flavor with something that is weaker and milder. You need to have a 50-50 balance. For instance, you would not want to pair, let's say, an aged Gouda with, I don't know, let's say a really light wine. The reason being is because the aged Gouda, being stronger, is going to overpower the other flavor. And the same goes for a strong wine. You never want to have a strong wine over a mild cheese, because then the wine's going to overpower the cheese and you're not going to taste the cheese. And therefore, you've just wasted your money. So you want to be really careful on balancing things. Strong flavors go with strong flavors. Mild goes with mild. Medium goes with medium. That's just how it should go. Never go under or over those markers.
What would you say? What kind of flavor profile does peanut butter have to brie? Like, are they both strong? Are they both weak? Is one stronger than the other one?
I know, because didn't you try this?
Yeah, it wasn't that good.
But peanut butter is, we all know it's nutty and creamy, but it's also really fatty. So you got to take that into account. What is also fatty is brie and camembert. They are all fat. So when you put two fatty things together, it really doesn't mesh well. Bries really come better into play when it's paired with things like apples and pears, and you can do fresh fruit with them too. That's also a really good pairing. Crisp crackers. I know that sounds weird that I said that, but there are a variety of crisp crackers and they're not always crisp.
Didn't you say honey as well? Or was that another cheese?
Honey is really good with blue, brie, goat cheese, not with Goudas and not with Parmesans, just because they're sharper in flavor and then it just overpowers it. So honey. And honey actually comes in a variety of flavors, as you know. So it just depends on the kind of honey you get. When it comes to wine, liquor, and beer, these can be paired with cheese, but you need to know which kind to use. Otherwise, again, one will overpower the other. To kind of get an idea as to what cheese would be best with what wine or liquor or beer, just simply Google the cheese with saying like, what would be a good wine for this cheese? And then it'll give you a base options to choose from. It's pretty simple. Chocolate can also be paired with cheese, but the same rule applies to alcohol. You need to make sure that the chocolate is not stronger or weaker than the cheese it's going up against. Manchego is a really good cheese to pair with chocolate. I would probably recommend either a milk chocolate or a dark chocolate that has notes of like, let me think. Like Solstice is a good chocolate bar. So when it comes to chocolate bars, like fine ones, they're not necessarily defined by the type of chocolate. They're defined by where they come from. So there's like Venezuela. There's, I think, a Costa Rica one. Like there's one from Trinidad. I think that one's also, they're different beans. So cocoa beans also come with different flavors. That's a totally different episode that can be done, because that in itself is a whole wild thing. But I would recommend doing like a caramely chocolate or like a milk chocolate with a manchego, because the two will really work well with each other. The sweet and salty really work well with each other.
I just wanted to poke in real quick on this chocolate conversation. I love chocolate as well. I wouldn't say I'm more of a chocolate connoisseur than I am with cheese, but I wanted to bring up, I have a coworker who she came from Venezuela 6 months ago and started working with me at my job. And she was like, she still hasn't had a lot of American things. Like just recently, she tried her first pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks and she was obsessed.
Oh yeah, that stuff is good.
But Hershey's in Venezuela, they have chocolate, right? But they don't have things like Hershey's over there. She said she tried Hershey's and she said, this is not chocolate. This is not chocolate. It is disgusting.
There's reasons for that.
But she tried Reese's and she's obsessed with Reese's cups, which I find funny because it's the same company. But I was like, but I like Hershey's. And apparently a lot of people don't like Hershey's. And I'm like, what? I love Hershey's.
So I would hands down recommend never pair a Hershey's with cheese. It's basically an insult to the cheese itself. It's not anything good. Chocolate. So to kind of barely skim the surface of chocolate, when farmers go and they harvest cocoa beans, they come in these like cocoa pods and then they harvest the beans from that. And then from there, they usually go through a fermentation process. And that fermentation process has a very short window as to when you want to obtain that particular product. Now, a lot of artisan chocolate makers, those tends to be the ones that are really expensive, want that particular bean at that ripened window. What Hershey's does is they let that ripening window go past and then they buy it when it's at its lowest peak in flavor. And the reason they do that is because they can purchase it at a lower price. The higher the price, the better the flavor. The lower the price, the worse the bean. And that's how Hershey's gets away with it.
I did not know that.
Hershey's also screws over a lot of farmers as well. So there's something called fair trade. There's a couple of different varieties of fair trade. Fair trade would be, well, they say that they're paying the farmer a fair wage and then they're bringing it to the market at a fair price. That is not fair trade. That is messed up. Fair trade is when you go to the farmer and you recognize their talent and what they can produce and you invest in the farmer. meaning you send them to school, you teach them on how to better grow their business, you invest in them, and therefore you get the product from them and you bring it to wherever you want to, and then enhance that investment into a really good product. That is a fair trade. That's how it should always be. But a lot of companies don't do that. Hershey's is definitely not one of those companies. What they'll do is they'll screw farmers out of their contracts and set them for like, we'll buy your product for 10 years, but you can only sell it to us and we're only going to pay you this wage. And it screws the farmer over epically. So
I did not know that. Now I feel terrible.
So when looking into fair trade, be careful on what you think fair trade might be, because there is a complete difference on the two. Going back to chocolates, so ways to consider on how you can match a chocolate with a cheese. Lighter and milder cheeses work well with milk and white chocolate, which, by the way, white chocolate is not really a chocolate. It's only white because of the cocoa butter. That's it. While stronger cheeses can stand up to the more boldness of dark chocolate. This way, neither cheese nor the chocolate will overpower each other. And then fruits, veggies, and nuts, they're all wonderful and versatile to use. Really can't go wrong with either one of those. And then cured and deli meats. These are really popular with creating platters. They come in varieties of things. Some people do like sliced ham, sliced turkey. Some people get like a thicker slice of ham and cube it up and have that ready to go. Prosciutto, but I spell it prosciutto to spell it. So prosciutto is a really good one. That's really thin sliced ham. It's a ham type product, but it's usually coming from Spain.
I thought it was Italy.
Let me double check. I think Iberico is from Spain. Anyways, it's a really salty, like thin. And when they say cured meats, it's not like where it's been cooked. It's just been cured in an aging process. So you can look into that. Salami and chorizo are really good options as well.
Oh my God.
Really
chorizo.
Can't go wrong with those. They pretty much go well with anything, honestly. Those are your pairings. I have a couple of guides of what you can use to pair cheeses with. There's a really great website called iGourmet. They cover a variety of things, but one of the things that they really shine with is cheese. And it really helps to kind of increase your knowledge of cheese because they have a whole wide variety of them. In some of the cases, when you're looking at the cheese from their website, they'll even tell you what it pairs well with, which is really nice. And it's free. You can sign up, but it's mostly just free to kind of look at. I used iGourmet about 90% of the time when I was a cheesemonger because it was so versatile and so nice to use. Anything else before we go to our last bit?
I don't think so. Let's hop right in.
Okay. Charcuterie boards, also known as cheese platters. So these come in a wide variety. So you can typically find cheese platters that are prepackaged. Do you want to talk about that and how they look?
Yeah. So if you go to Walmart or Target, sometimes you'll see these little circular dishes with like a plastic top over it,
and segments.
Yeah, it'll be segmented in like cheese, meat. Typically, from what you told me, it'll be like an odd number of cheeses, right?
Yeah.
And it could have like Swiss, cheddar jack, cheddar, and maybe some kind of like, I don't know, Ha-Varti.
Yeah.
And then it would be like prosciutto, ham, salami, pepperoni. They're typically cheap. Sometimes you'll even find like I don't know what they call them, like margarita sauce in the middle, like for the meats.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cheap thing for the holidays. It's usually a holiday thing. For my family, at least, we use it for New Year's, Christmas, and Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and they're usually quick and grab and goes, like last minute kind of things. If you go to a party and you don't see one of these, but you see a much bigger board that is elaborately laid out, those are probably going to be the good cheeses. Though, here's my thing. With charcuterie boards, while they look great on picture, they are not practical. You can look up cheese boards or cheese platters or charcuterie boards, and you'll see these really beautiful pictures of blocks of cheese and grapes and fruit and nuts and chocolates and tomatoes and all these fun little things. But then if you look at it, it's like, well, how do you actually serve that cheese? It looks good in a picture, but in reality, it sucks an actual using of it. For instance, if you don't have knives and stuff, it's going to be really hard to break apart that cheese and that cheddar, and you may not want all of those cheeses to intermingle with each other. Like blue cheese, probably don't want that near any other cheeses because it'll also absorb that flavor onto it as well. And then, of course, if you have cheese left over, you might want to clean the cheese with a little bit of vinegar because more than likely that blue spore has popped up and over the mountains of the grapes and landed on the cheese, and then will there start growing mold. So that's kind of just a thing to kind of be aware of. There's a variety of ways you can do this. You can do almonds. Almonds are always a good one. So if you want to just start out basic, I recommend doing 3 cheeses and then maybe 2 accompaniments or 3 accompaniments. When it comes to putting cheeses on a platter, you always want to put them in odd numbers because if you do an even number, you're always going to want to add something in the middle or something additional to it. So just do it in odd numbers. And then between those cheeses, you can do like something with nuts. Green or red grapes are perfect. You can either keep them on the vine or take them off the vine. It's totally up to you. And then in the last one, you could probably do, what do I typically do? Grapes, nuts, and then sometimes I put chocolate on the board. And if not, then in the other case, I'll put crackers on the board. Really doesn't matter the kind of, well, it does matter the kind of crackers. So like you can do Triscuits, but Triscuits also come in different varieties of flavors. So just be aware of the kind of Triscuit or cracker you're being on there because some of them have different flavors and they won't always play nice with the other cheeses as well. But in the end, if you're wanting to create a simple board for a party, and you want to make everyone smile, the ones I usually stick to when it comes to big parties, because the bigger the party, the more expensive the product becomes, stick to your bases. Cheddar, pepper jack, Swiss. You can do blue cheese if you want to. And then when it comes to those cheeses, not the blue cheese, you want to cut them up into cubes because they're a lot easier to use and eat with. And then with blue cheese, you always just want to make sure you have a knife or you can use a spoon, like the back of a spoon to grab and spread so that it makes it a little bit easier for people to get that stuff. If you're going to have blue cheese on the board, have a jam or a honey with it as well. You can usually put that next to the cheese itself, or you can just have it off to the side where people can put honey on their plate and then dip the cheese in that as well. Jams are really good to have. Pepper jellies are phenomenal. You really can't go wrong with the jam, honestly, really with any of the cheeses. You can do them on aged cheeses and they do sometimes work really well. But then again, just be wary that if you do a really sharp cheese, it may then overpower the jam itself. But the jam might actually make the cheese taste a little bit sweeter. But then again, you're then muting all the flavors of the cheese. So it just depends on how you want to play with it. Something to keep in mind is textures. Okay. So when you eat cheese, it's important to pay attention to textures. So soft cheeses are already soft. So what do you want to pair with a soft cheese? A cracker, because you want to be able to crunch into it, but also enjoy the silky smoothness of it. It's just aesthetically pleasing to the mind to do so. You don't want to do a soft with a soft. It just doesn't make any sense. But with that, you can do like a baguette. You can do types of French breads because they're crunchy on the outside and soft in the middle, and that totally works just fine. With harder cheeses, you can do crackers with them, but make sure you cut your cheeses a lot thinner so it's easier to eat. But make sure that the cracker itself is not harder than the cheese because you don't want to be biting into hard on hard. It just doesn't really make any sense. What you could do is you could do a cracker with a little bit of jam and then a little bit of cheese on top of that. That would work.
What would the equivalent to like soft cheese on hard cracker without a median, like jam? What would a good thing for like a hard cheese be? Not a soft cracker, but like...
So there's those like, I'm trying to think of, they're called like water crackers. They're really thin. And they kind of have like a very slight vinegar coating on it, or rice crackers. And maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Those are kind of good to have with the cheese because it provides a zing. And then you have the cheese on top of it. There's a company out there called 34 Degrees. They make a variety of crackers and they all come in different flavors. The toasted onion would be a really good one with cheddars just because the combo is just phenomenal. I would stay away from... what is the wheat thins? Wheat thins are super hard and you don't want to do a super hard with a super hard. Wheat thins are great for softer cheeses like Ha-Vartis and Bries and Blues, but they're not great with cheddars because they're just too hard to crunch. And when you're eating that, you're crunching with that in your mouth and it's mixing and it's not so great. It dries out your mouth along with the aged cheddar or a harder cheese. That's also like sucking the moisture out of your mouth and it's not a pleasant thing. So stick to lighter flavors, a little bit crispier so it's easier to chew with it. That's what I would recommend.
What about, hear me out, what about a hard cheddar with peanut butter on it? because they already have those cheddar crackers with peanut butter inside. So, I mean, would that make sense?
Okay, so if we're going to go down that route, I would recommend doing the pretzel with the peanut butter on the inside of it, those pretzel bites.
Yeah.
The hard ones with a cheddar. That would be a really good combo because you're getting the saltiness and the kind of sourdoughness of the pretzel. And then you get the kind of like the salty sweet of the peanut butter. And that will go really well with the cheddar. And Ritz crackers. Ritz crackers are just phenomenal. I don't care how crappy and baseline they are. They're just the perfect flakiness, buttery, just overall best cracker to use in any situation. I'll take that to my grave easily. And a little bit of Cheese Whiz. Something to be aware of too is you want to be sure when you're serving a cheese board or you're doing like a platter or you're just doing a couple of cup of cheeses, be aware of your guests' dietary needs. Some people can't have milk. And generally when they say they can't have milk, they're referring to cow's milk. So that means they're lactose intolerant. So your next best bet is to play with goat cheese. Goats and sheep's milk cheese don't have the lactose in it. It's a totally different game. So they can have those cheeses. They're totally fine. They're safe to go with that. If they're gluten-free, then you don't want to get crackers with your board. You want to have another option for them. You can find gluten-free crackers. That would be something to keep in mind. If they are, I want to say vegetarian, you might want to find cheeses that are made with vegetable rennet and not animal rennet. There are about 5 different rennets to be aware of. They do kind of help with the flavor of cheese. And rennet is basically a coagulant. It's what makes cheese curdle. You can't really make a cheese without rennet. You have to have it. And there's different types of rennet. I looked it up. I was trying to figure out, let me pull this up again. Rennet types. So there's animal rennet, which is usually from the stomach lining. There's vegetable rennet. There's microbial rennet, which is made in a lab. That's a vegetarian one. Genetically engineered rennet. There is also a fermentation produced rennet as well. I'm not sure what cheeses would actually use that, but there's all these varieties of kinds. So if you have someone that has like super in needs of dietary whateverness, I would probably go with vegetable or microbial rennet. You can find that by just flipping the cheese over and looking at the ingredients, and it'll tell you right there. If it just says rennet, it's usually referring to cow. So those are all options you guys can keep in mind. The cheese world itself, like I said, is huge. It's like a freaking multiverse that never seems to end. There's different varieties, different companies, and then there's, of course, different areas of the world that they come from. You might have a cheddar from America that tastes really good, but you might have a cheddar from, South America or Spain or Europe or England, and they'll taste completely different. So it's always fun to try new things. One thing to keep in mind is if you go to a specialty store like Whole Foods or Publix, and there are cheeses like a little cheese island, and there happens to be a person there, don't be afraid to go and ask him, can I try this cheese? The best way to kind of get your foot in the door is to try something that you can definitely get. They'll give you like a little piece, they'll let you taste it, and then that is something that might help you in the buying of cheese. And then I think that's pretty much it without really going overboard with anything else.
I guess I just have one more question for you.
Don't ask it.
What?
I'm just kidding. Go for it.
I'd have to say that one of my favorite cheeses out of all of them would be Parmesan. But what would you say is one of your all-time favorite cheeses?
So I know we discussed this earlier, but one did pop into my head, and maybe I'm going to change my mind. Parmigiano Reggiano will always be my go-to for just my absolute favorite. But Parmigiano Reggiano can also be really expensive. So the next best thing for me would be something called Bellavitano, which is a cheddar Parmesan hybrid. It is amazing in taste. It's made in Wisconsin by a company called Sartori. The Sartoris are actually from Italy. So it kind of has like a fun little twist to it. The thing with the Bellavitanos is they come in a regular kind of flavor, and then they also have wine flavored ones. So what they'll do is during the aging process, they'll dunk the wheels in tanks of like Merlot or a raspberry beer or balsamic or whiskey, and they'll do that for days on end. What happens is it's cheese kind of soaks it up from the outside in. So you get this really beautiful beautiful purplish, sometimes pink or lightly brown. A lot of people think it's wax and they cut it off, which is a total bummer because that's part of the cheese and you want to eat it because that has a lot of the flavor in it. And the cool thing about the Belvitanos is with the flavor being on the outside, from the outside, the flavor kind of travels inwards. So the further outside you go, the stronger the flavor, and the further in you go, the lighter and creamier the flavor. When you're eating those types of cheeses, you want to cut them in matchsticks almost, but you always want to keep the Merlot intact because it's a really unique experience to taste it and then taste that whole flavor profile going through. It is so good. I could eat it on my own. I could eat it just like a candy bar. I could put it over pasta. It's just a freaking delicious cheese. But then if that's not usually available, Parmigiano Reggiano will be my second best. It is the gold of cheese. It's just amazing.
Did have Belvitano at Publix. I saw it earlier today, and I only recognize it because I just looked up what it looks like. And that like shield kind of symbol that I'm seeing stamped on it looks very familiar to the cheeses that I saw at Publix. So I'm almost 100% sure I saw Belvitano at Publix today.
They're really good. Like they have a variety of things. If I go to their website and I pull up their cheeses, in their Belvitano line, they have Merlot, Tennessee whiskey, Chardonnay, garlic and herb, tomato basil. So the drier ones like garlic and herb and tomato basil, black pepper and espresso are dry rubs. So they'll just rub that on the outside of the cheese and then let it age. The espresso one's kind of, some people really like it, but you're just eating dry espresso beans, basically is what you're doing. It's ground up into a fine powder, but that's basically what you're having. But that cheese would be really good with chocolate because mocha, hello. They have cheddars called Monte Amore, Old World Farmhouse, Cherrywood Smoked, Sriracha, and Italian Herb. They make just a regular Parmesan. They also do Asiago. In their Asiago line, I've actually had the rosemary and olive oil one. Phenomenal. That would be great with any Italian dinner. And then I haven't had any of their spreads yet, but the Belvitanos are my favorite line so far.
Have you had the Merlot?
Oh, yeah. The Merlot is really good. It's strong in flavor, but it's really good. At first, you might be kind of like, oh, I don't know if I like this. But then the more you eat it over time, you actually grow to love it.
See, that's interesting because one of my coworkers tried Merlot by itself, like the alcohol, and he said it was the worst thing he's ever consumed in his life, and he would never have it again. But now I'm wondering how it tastes with cheese, if that's what that is. I'm assuming that's what that is.
Yeah. So it's actual, like, it's not flavors that they're dipping it in. It's actual wine. They're dipping this in actual wine, beer, whiskey, all of those things. And it's soaking in. Now, the thing is as the cheese ages, the alcohol naturally burns off. So when you're eating the cheese, you're not going to get a high out of it, but you are going to taste the actual flavor profile of that particular wine. It's really good. If you don't want to do the Merlot one, then the next one that I would recommend is the balsamic one, which is a really good flavor. And then the maybe not Chardonnay. Probably balsamic, Merlot, or the Tennessee whiskey. The whiskey one's going to be more expensive just because of the type of whiskey they're using, but it is definitely worth it.
This tomato basil one looks interesting. It looks like magma. Here, I'll send you a picture of it.
Oh, I'm looking at it.
Oh, you're looking at it? It says it's award-winning, international award-winning.
Yeah, they win lots of awards. Their cheeses are just absolutely phenomenal. There's a cheese in Utah by a company called Beehive Cheese Company. And they have one called Big John's Cajun Rubbed. And it's just like this Cajun rub that they put on the outside of it, but it's proprietary blend. They used to buy it from a local restaurant. And then when the restaurant closed, they bought the recipe from the restaurant. And now they hold it to themselves. No one knows what's in the actual blend except for Beehive themselves. But it is such a good flavor. Oh, I can't explain it. It's spicy and savory and not like punches you in the face in a bad way, but it's just a good, awesome cheese. Pair it with salami, you're good to go.
Looks like I might need to try that too.
They do a hatch chili one as well, and that one's pretty phenomenal. Those are all good options. I just recommend when you start out buying cheeses and trying cheeses, buy yourself a little guide, like a little notebook. You can get them on Amazon. You can pretty much get them anywhere. You can get cheese-specific ones, or you can just get one of those just notebooks at Walmart. Write down the cheese, all the information that you can find, and then try the cheese and write down what you think the cheese tastes like and date it. And then next time, try that cheese again and see if it changes, because you might have matured and grown to love it a little bit more. And you might notice, oh, maybe it does taste a little bit more bold, or maybe it tastes more fruity than I last tried it.
I feel like if you're trying new cheeses as well, how I got into it actually was, I know Costco does this. A couple other stores also do this. Costco has these little like cheeses around the world platters that you would buy. They're called cheese flights. The one I got was Kirkland's signature cheese flight, and it came with Alpine, cheddar, goat, manchego, and fontina. And it also showed you wine pairings appropriate for each cheese. So if you want to like broaden your horizons, those are pretty cheap because it's not a lot of cheese. It's a little bit of cheese, but it's like, okay, this is what this tastes like. This is also what this tastes like. They're very different cheeses. See what you like. And you can also pair them with wines. See if you like those pairings as well.
Yeah, and on top of that, some grocery stores will also sell like a Spanish or a Spain set. So you'll get like the Drunken Goat, which is it's kind of like a Manchego, but it's a goat version. And then they'll have like the Manchego, and then they'll have the 3 milk with it too. And they'll already have them like pre-sliced. Those are pretty cool to try as well. Some companies do a variety of like multi-packets of cheeses. So if you want to try it that way, go for it. In the end, it's all up to you on how you think and perceive the cheese. Just because one person says it tastes like that doesn't mean it's going to taste like that to you. So don't let someone else ruin it for you. Experience it for yourself. If you have questions about cheeses or you've created cheese boards and you want to share it with us, you can easily email us at talktothemuzzle@gmail.com. You can send us a picture on Twitter at @FromTheMuzzle. We have a Blue Sky, which is linked down below, or you can join our Telegram group and show everyone else. It's super easy. Anything else?
I think we've covered everything.
All right. As I know that's a lot to take in. That's a lot of information. But like I said, you can't fit all of this in one episode. It's just impossible. So I really try to condense it. I've like remade these notes like 4 or 5 times. So there you go. I hope you guys have a great holidays. Holidays? No.
Yeah.
Have a great holiday season. There we go. And we'll see you guys on our next episode, which I don't know what it'll be yet, but it'll be something.
Mystery.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Adios.